Okay, so I know this is the episode where we're talking about the bases, but I realized when I did the Enchantress video, I forgot to talk about some small details. If you look back here, you'll see this little clasp. This stuff's gotta be supported. And it's a nice little detail. Uh, this is a big file and it's hard to control on my machine. Well, okay, let's see if that's good enough. Let's go through the layers. And this is the actual file that I printed from rather than recreating it, which is why it's so difficult to control. See right there? That's an island. This was an island. Tiny, tiny little things, but they need to be supported if you want the detail to come out. Likewise, down here on the bottom of the boot, these little clasps. Now, they're really hard to see. And with the addition of the screen capture, it's making this really difficult to control. Oh, you know what? I think if I do this, it'll help. So let's go down through the layers a little bit. Okay, these little clasps. Another nice little set of details. Even though it's in the back, I like that it's there. It adds a little reality to it, right? These boots have to stay on some way. But you'll see as we go through, we get an island right there, right? That's got to be supported. But the good thing about this is that they're kind of on an angle. So once you go up, all this stuff starts supporting itself. But we need to do this little support to these tiny little details in the back. Otherwise, file will not come out complete. Ah, and I forgot again. Um, the loincloth in the back is the same thing as the loincloth in the front. You got to, I know it's really hard to see here. This is, once again, the actual file that I printed from. But if you look really closely here, you can see I supported it all along the sides. So it because the loincloth is really free floating all the way until about here, where it touches the body. So if Chitubox would just support it at the tips here on maybe in this little V, but otherwise the whole thing would just be waving in the breeze, and you wouldn't get good support. You might get a layer shift kind of thing. So I supported it all along this side and all along this side just to hold it in place. Right? I'm trying to get a view where maybe you can see it better, but there's so much going on back here, it's hard to tell. But I just wanted to stick that in there. Got to support the loincloth in the back too. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick. We're not going to save that. No, you can't see it. Now, I did the base two ways. Okay, I did the base two ways. I cut it in half. Now, on the Kickstarter, you'll see you will not see these tabs. And that's because I was a doof and I had glued the base together before I took pictures. I don't know why, but I forgot. So I just quickly cut it in half to show you how I split the base. But these are the tabs. And I included a little feature that, see, I have found that glue, just based on its, just on the adhesive property of the glue, is not always enough. Sometimes things, it holds it together, but it needs a little extra. So I've included, you can see here, there's these little indents, right? I took a cylinder and I cut a little chunk out of the tab. And also on the slot that it goes into, I cut a little thing out of it so that there'll be a mechanical lock. You spread a little glue in this hole, then you go in there and you stick a little glue up in the depression in the slot. And then when it all solidifies, it creates its own pin, right? The adhesive itself, the hardness of the adhesive becomes a mechanical lock to hold it together. So you have two ways to keep this thing together. And this is the piece that's just going to sit on a shelf, so maybe it's not as big a deal, but I like stuff to hold together and hold together good. Some of the other things, if you go through, you'll see I did a ray gun. That's a piece you're meant to carry around and move, and if you drop it, if you've just got flat surface to flat surface and nothing but adhesive holding it together, that's not always enough of a bond, right? So I started adding these little mechanical locks to help it hold itself together. And you can also see over here, I put this on an angle, and we've got drainage holes here, here, and here, and I also put holes in here because I like to be able to, when I'm washing the part, I want exits and entrances so that the air can get out and the alcohol can get in and wash the inside of any uncured resin out, right? And when you put these parts in the wash, you'll see air bubbles coming out, and that's because it's filling up with alcohol. And then you can like swish it around a little bit, dump it out. I find if you do that like 3, maybe 4 times, the inside is clear of all resin. And I think a few months is the most I've ever really had a resin print. But so far, I've had no cracking. Everything is nice and dry. Now, this on the back, all of these here are just primarily to hold it down to the bed, right? This is it's not the biggest piece you'll ever print, I'm sure, but I wanted to make sure we had enough to hold this to the bed. So I added all these extra supports, and here's supports supporting the supports, because otherwise, as these go up, this is just going to be this tiny little thing vibrating in the breeze, and I want nice, sturdy, strong supports. So that's why I did that. And that's half the base. That's really all there is to it. There's really not a whole lot to printing this. This was easy as pie. I had no trouble printing this. And these holes here, you don't even have to cover up because that's where the skulls go, and they're going to just go right over those holes. And the vent holes in here, nobody's going to see them because you're going to glue that together. And oh, I didn't put any in the back there. So that's, and the other half is pretty much exactly the same. Okay, and like I said, it's pretty much the same thing. I put a bunch of these on the top merely to make sure it's held firmly to the bed. These might have been enough. Maybe all these here were totally unnecessary. I would rather play it safe. Like I said, I don't want to contaminate my resin with floaty bits that I got to try to filter out. I've had none of that. Everything has been held fast. Everything's printed well. You can see here, I did the same thing with the vent holes inside here. There's some vent holes. Here you can see, that little depression right there? That was part of the mechanical lock. It's not very deep, but it's deep enough. I just wanted to give the glue something else to hold onto. Here's another vent hole. It's really pretty much all there was to printing this. The base was easy as pie. Not going to save that. No, it's fine. I'll show you the whole piece here. Now, if you've got a larger printer like the Saturn S, which I have, you can print the whole base as one piece, which is really the easiest, right? It's really the easiest way to do it. But here you can see I put vent holes in all of the posts where you don't have to worry about covering them up, right? No suction, no problems. Supported all of this from the bottom. Now, I added vent holes in the back for resin drainage, but I don't know if they're strictly necessary. I probably could have done without them, but it's on the bottom, right? I don't even, you don't even have to fill that up if you don't really want. No one's going to see it. And here you go, all of these just to hold everything down to the bed. And this was easy peasy. I probably redid these all myself. Um, like I said, most of the times I like to start with auto supports, but there are times I want to go through and do it myself and make sure certain things are done the way I want. Auto supports works pretty good most of the time, but I don't 100% trust it. Right? And here you can see it's hollow inside, all the way down to the bottom. Worked out great. And that's pretty much the base. That's really all there was to printing the base. I had no problem at all with it. Printed like a dream. Since this was really short, maybe we should go into a few of these. These are the skulls. Right? And this must have been an earlier version because I had it originally cut. I thought it might be easier to print this, so I had cut the head. I was going to make the head the one, the skull she's holding on her hip. I was going to make that a separate print and then glue it together. But gluing resin together isn't quite the same as gluing FDM stuff. When you can, it's best to deal with as few parts as possible with resin. Just because if you get any warpage, you actually have to sculpt things and it's a pain. That's why when I cut the Enchantress for the smaller beds, I cut her where I did because it would be easier to repair that than anywhere else. And I could have cut her up more, but I wanted to make it as simple as possible to reassemble. And these skulls, right? Big drain hole in the back. Did I put one in the bottom? No, it's not going to show me unless I go into supports. Yeah, yeah, you can see it through here. So there's a big drain hole in the bottom and there's one in the back. And once again, that's because I want to be able to get the alcohol into the inside of the head. If I only put one hole in there, right, that would be fine for printing. It would have alleviated the suction. But I want two. I want an exit and an entrance so the alcohol can go in and the air can come out and I can swish it around in there and clean out the inside of the skulls as well. Right? That way you get the least amount of cured resin. You don't have to worry about trying to fish an LED in there. I've had no problems with it so far. So that is the skulls. Well, even though that's an old version that you guys won't see anymore. Let's see, what else, what else, what else? That's really it. That's the other part. That's all there is to supporting the Enchantress.